Welcome, welcome. This is the Employee Journey Mapping Fundamentals webinar with PIN. I am Lexi. We're getting started, just opening the doors, if you will, about a minute early so that we can make the most of our time together. And we'll take about a minute past to let people join. So in the meantime, if you want to put in chat where you're dialing in from, I am a hello from Asheville, North Carolina, and we have Joris in Sydney, Stacey is in Phoenix, and then Anharad is in, did you say Melbourne? Melbourne. There we go. Ooh, Las Vegas. Quick on the cactus emoji.
You were just there, Stacey. Vegas.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. I was there for Transform, and it was how do I even say? There was so many people. It was overwhelming and also amazing, but yeah, there was so much going on. So, and I'm calling in from Phoenix. If you didn't say that already. I'm looking, there are some other folks that look like they're pretty close to me.
Did you gamble in Vegas, Stacey?
You know, I did what I normally do, which is like, I just find one machine that is calling to me and I stick in like $3 and that's basically it. Because I don't understand what's happening. Like I don't understand how you win. So I just press a button, I lose, and then I go about my day. And that's basically it.
Yeah, maybe you don't use those machines anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really,
$3.
You can't, how can you pass by, like a Karate Kid machine and not just stick $1 in and see?
Someone just said they're from the birth town of Avril Lavigne, which I love that tidbit. That's fabulous.
And a little skateboard behind it as well.
We are 2 minutes past now, so feel free to keep chiming in on chat if you want to help us build our geographic map of participants. But you are at PIN's Employee Journey Mapping Fundamentals webinar. Welcome. Thank you for coming. We will go over the goals for today's session. Again, I'm Lexi, for those who don't know. I'm PIN's head of marketing. You probably saw one of my emails asking you to come today, so thank you for being here. Joris, if you could go to the next slide. This webinar is all about employee journey mapping. We're going to talk about what it is, why you would want to create one, how to get started, and then we're going to jump into our free employee journey designer tool to show you how to create a map for free. So you all have access to that just by being here and just in general, because it's free to everyone. And so before I hand it over to Joris and Stacey for introductions and go through this housekeeping slide, I want to introduce you to our illustrator, give a wave to Anharad. She'll be taking notes throughout the presentation today, and we'll do a grand reveal at the end. So Anharad, if you want to hide video and join us back at the end, that would be great. And for housekeeping, to ask Joris and Stacey a question, you can use the Q&A function. You can also upvote those questions. So we'll try to prioritize questions as we go throughout the webinar. And we'll also try to prioritize those that have the most upvotes so that we're getting the most relevant questions answered. You can also chat with us using the chat feature. If you want to just message me or one of the other panelists, you can use just chat with panelists. You can also enable captions through your Zoom toolbar, and you will get this deck and recording along with some other great resources. So on that note, I'm going to jump off of video and hand it over to Joris and Stacey, and I'll be with you on chat and back at the end of the webinar. So take it away.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Lexi. Oh, am I starting, Joris?
Yeah, you can start. You can start.
Oh, we both got too excited. We're trying to kick it off at the exact same time already. Hello, everyone. I am Stacey Nordwall. I'm the VP of People Strategy at PIN. I was an early HR people team member at CultureAmp, and I was I was the first in at a startup before that, which means a little bit that I am a glutton for punishment, but also means that I am really accustomed to getting in early and building stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stacey. My name is Joris. I'm one of the co-founders of PIN. And before this, I used to be a practitioner like you, Stacey, and like so many people probably joining this call as well. I used to run HR at Atlassian for many years, and then at Squarespace, Typeform. And now I'm basically building the tools that I needed when I was running HR myself. So yeah, let's dive in. Stacey, do you want to take it off with some general information
Well,
about the journey map?
I want to also kind of give a little bit, build on what Lexi said, give a little framing to what we're going to be going over today. And as she mentioned, we're going to be starting off at kind of a high level. When you registered, we asked if there were any questions that you had about employee journey mapping. And some of the questions were things that were like, what even is an employee journey map and how would I even use it? So we're going to start there. And then over the course of the webinar, we're going to dig into more practical things like how would you incorporate it into your workflow, and then dig into the tool, how would you even build your map? So we're going to start with, what is an employee journey map? You might have heard this term, you might have heard terms like design thinking or employee-centric design, and all of these are things that are really methods for you to think about how to design what your employee experience at an organization is, a way to visualize and conceptualize it. And since a lot of these things are repeatable and predictable, it's something that you can proactively build. So an employee journey is all of the moments across an employee's experience at your organization, from candidate through to alumni and exit. The journey map is just a visualization of that journey. So it's something that helps you to proactively design the experience and define and prioritize the work that needs to be done as part of your broader HR strategy. And I know that this still seems a little bit abstract, so we're going to bring that into the hypothetical into reality with an example that Joris heard from a colleague at Atlassian.
Yeah, you talk about predictable moments, right? So I mentioned before that I ran HR at Atlassian, and at Atlassian, when someone celebrates their 10-year anniversary, they get one of those bubble hats. It's a silly thing, but people absolutely love them for some reason. And I was speaking to an old colleague the other day who had reached his 10-year milestone, and his manager had forgotten to order the bubble hat and to celebrate him during his 10-year anniversary at the company. So for him, a moment that really matters turned from a great celebration into something somewhat disappointing, right? And this happens all the time. Even for a very, very straightforward moment, like your 10-year anniversary, you should think that this moment would be managed well. You can have one person who has a great experience and another person in the organization who has a disappointing experience. So what we want is that experience to be consistently great. And the truth is that there's many more moments that matter across the employee experience. Like the 10-year anniversary is quite straightforward, but some of them are more ambiguous. So how do companies manage each? So an employee journey map, I think, is a tool to help identify those moments and manage those moments that matter within your company. Now, the concept of journey mapping has been around for a long time because it's used in go-to-market teams all the time to manage the customer journey. So take this example at Starbucks. They realized that the customer experience after entering a store wasn't great. So to really understand what was happening, they created a journey map to visualize all the touch points, all those moments that a customer had with Starbucks. And through that process, they learned that customers were spending way too much time in line and trying to order, like submit their orders. So they introduced an app so you can order your coffees and other stuff beforehand. So they changed this process from something frustrating into a seamless and delightful experience. Now we can do something similar only within the organization, not using a customer journey map, but using an employee journey map.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe Stacey, go into the whys of a journey map a little bit.
Right. I know we love in HR, we love our why. We follow Simon Sinek, right? Let's always start with why. So I think that's a good example. Why do you want to create a journey map? Starbucks had a specific thing that they were trying to address. And it's similar when you're thinking about the employee experience. Like, do you have a particular goal that you're trying to achieve by working on that employee experience? And we'd like to really understand where you're currently at. So we're going to take a quick moment and ask you to participate in a word cloud from Menti. And you'll get that on the screen. And also Lexi will drop it in the chat. Go into the word cloud and let us know why you want to create a journey map. If you're not sure yet, that's okay too, because we're going to talk about some of the reasons and how you might incorporate it as we go through this webinar. But we kind of want to get a sense of where, what people are currently thinking about and why they're thinking of creating an employee journey map.
You're wise in a few words.
Yes, I know it has
You don't
to
have
be,
to write an essay, basically.
yeah. Good point. A couple of words, the high level theme is probably good. Otherwise, the word cloud will be maybe a bit too wordy. And we're looking for more cloud, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So go to menti.com, enter that code, and submit your answer. Like, what are you like? Why are you currently looking at it? Why a journey map from your perspective? Should I go to the cloud already, Stacey, or not yet?
Yeah, I bet there's some answers already bubbling in. So let's see if we can get, oh, heck yeah. Oh my gosh, so much. Okay. Consistency. I see consistency, clarity, engagement.
Great.
Oh, this is great.
Consistency keeps coming up. That's
Yeah,
really,
that is
that's
good.
really good.
Connect to purpose. I saw, oh, they're going by so fast.
I see friction as well. That's like the Starbucks example.
Yeah, I saw one that said kind of raise a bar on the employee experience. I think that's what it said, which is great. Fabulous. Okay, so this is consistency is obviously one we're going to talk about later and on a number of the things that came up in the word cloud. So it's really good to see that, you know, we're kind of thinking about it in the same way. And I think part of why you'll see consistency is on this slide, which is great. Part of why we think people want to create a journey map is one, really to prioritize the work that needs to get done and the resources that you'll need to do it. So building a map is one of the ways that you can identify the gaps that exist in the employee experience currently. It could be, you know, specific touch points or moments. It could be benefits, programs, or policies. And once you identify what those gaps are, you can prioritize and resource the ones that you think will have the highest impact on the business. And that is a way then that you can connect those priorities that you've created and the strategy to the business goals. So you're able to use your map to tell the story of the experience that you want to create and use it as a tool to help, you know, explain to the stakeholders within the business that the value that's going to be unlocked by working on those things. And that could be something such as like improved employee experience, engagement, retention, tenure, all of these things that show how your work is tying to the business's goals and the success of the business and why, you know, the resources you're requesting are needed. So those are two things. And I know, Joris, consistency is one that we talk about all the time as well.
Totally. I think work has just become, you know, even more complicated and distributed, right? Like more companies are hybrid, globally distributed. And I speak to HR leaders all the time that it's just tougher to manage like people in that environment. So in many organizations, there's huge differences on how experienced managers are and how they manage the moments for their people, where the person is located. And, you know, there is just no concept of a consistent approach as it relates to these employee moments. So we want to ensure that managers get the right nudges to manage all of those moments that matter for their people. And of course, we want employees to receive a consistent experience, regardless of their role, regardless of their location, regardless of who their manager is. I think from my own personal experiences, I think the benefit is also it's a much better way to manage your team as an HR leader. So when I was leading HR, we often worked very much in silos. Like HR ops had their list of projects, talent acquisition, L&D, right? And what's so great about the journey map is that you really take an employee's perspective. You put yourselves in the shoes of your employees. So instead of thinking about your L&D projects, your talent acquisition projects, those L&D folks will be thinking about how they can impact the experience throughout someone's employee journey. And so do other HR functions. So we now have a common language and a common framework. And the other great thing is within that framework, it offers a much more motivating way to manage your team as well, as it relates to progress. In HR, we often look at metrics. You probably did the same, Stacey, and people on this call as well, like engagement or turnover. But the truth is that you can work very hard in your HR team for a whole year and not change the engagement metric a bit, or turnover even increases, right? So what is great about the employee journey map is that you can look across your journey and identify, say, 80 moments that really matter in your organization. And of those 80, maybe 40 initially are managed very well. Now, on a week-to-week basis, you can then get this sense of progress. And maybe the next day you're managing, next week you're managing 41 well, a month later, maybe 50, later 60, right? So you get this sense of progress on a week-to-week basis as you're improving the employee experience. So I think for me, that has been a completely different way of managing and motivating the team.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it's something you can use with the team, but also, as an HR leader, a lot of the things that some of the time, what you want to do is go on like a listening tour with the other stakeholders in the business, and it's also a tool that you can use for that as well. So I think having that visual representation is really helpful when you're having those discussions. Okay, so but where to really begin? We've chatted through a number of the different reasons you might be thinking about wanting to create a journey map. We want to take a minute to poll you and find out what resonated with you. So we're going to kick off a poll, and we'll give everyone about 30 seconds or so to respond. You should see the poll that is coming up on your screen. It is a multi-select, so if there are a few different ones that are resonating with you, you can pick more than one. And we'll give everyone just a little bit of time to answer the poll, and we'll see what comes up.
I'm just watching it count down. I'll just do my voiceover so that it's fun. It's fun for me to reveal the results. So we do still have lots of responses coming in, so I kind of want to leave it open for a few more seconds. And right as I say that, it like tops off. All right, I'm going to end the poll. We've had it open for almost a minute now, and there's some clear top results here too. So we have at the top with 69% a resource or reference for employee experience planning, 65% a way to plan work with my team, 54% a strategy tool to show executives, and then our least popular options were a recruiting tool to showcase your employee experience to candidates, and some folks are still not sure. But those tops were a resource or reference for employee experience planning, a way to plan work with my team, and a strategy tool to show executives.
Fabulous. Joris, that sounds like that's pretty in alignment with the things that you're hearing as you talk to people as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think employee experience as a concept has really risen. I think with the rise of remote work as well, people are much more considerate about employee experience and how to manage that. The challenge has always been okay, what is really employee experience? And I think the journey map as a concept, moments that matter, and managing those moments that matter well is really what encapsulates employee experience, for me at least. Which is fantastic because it kind of defines that role a lot more.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, it's good to kind of get all of these data points, because I think that it means the conversation is advancing in a way too. Like, we're starting to get more aligned about, you know, what we see the employee journey map being, how we want to use it. And so I think it's really, all right, then how are we going to get started? So I think that's one of the things we're trying to help with, is help people understand what are the ways that you could incorporate this as part of your regular workflow, right? Because if it's something that you have to kind of add in as an extra process, we're all incredibly busy or over busy as it is. And so we really want to focus on what are some examples of the ways that you could start weaving this into your regular workflows. So as an example, you know, if you want to use as a strategy tool, you can bring it into team offsites, planning sessions, quarterly plannings. That is a great way to begin. If you're starting a new role, it's really something, again, you can use as a conversation piece, or even to understand, like, what is the current state of the employee experience within the org as you're joining, or even when you're doing surveys and you're getting your engagement results. That's a point at which you could bring, you know, the journey map back in, engage with execs, other senior leaders by using the map and showing how and where you're going to action those results. So I think, you know, knowing how you want to use your map, and then that helps you figure out where are the ways that I can incorporate it into my work in a way that's actually going to support me, support the team. So yeah, I think that's one of the things. And as we've talked about, a big portion of that is collaboration.
Yeah, I think like collaborating with the team to kind of get your map up and running is really good. Like, I always used to do it during strategy offsites, and have a portion allocated of the strategy offsite allocated to, in the beginning, create your map. But then after that, you know, once you've got it created, is to really provide an update on, hey, what does the end-to-end employee experience look like at the moment? Are there any moments that we need to focus on, et cetera, et cetera? So having those touch points is, you know, I really found very valuable. And I can't state enough, once I started using journey maps in the organizations I used to work for, it just changed my whole perspective on how to manage work. Like, it's kind of crazy that in like go-to-market teams, there has been this strategy framework for the longest of times, right? Like, the customer journey has been this framework, and they make all these decisions based on it, like technology decisions, resourcing, what projects to focus on. In HR, we don't really have a strategy framework like that, and the journey map as such creates, like, it's a wonderful strategy framework, and all of those decisions can be made based on that. So using it during strategy planning, excellent, like, works like a treat. It's fantastic. Stacey, one question that came in, like, what kind of size companies is journey mapping ideal for? The person was asking, like, hey, you know, 300 people, is that too small? Are we talking more about larger companies? Like, we've had like thousands of companies like creating journey maps, logging in, all of that stuff, right? So you've got a little bit of data there as well. What is the holy grail of size when you use this?
I mean, I think at any size, really. I ultimately, you have an employee experience at your company from the beginning, from, you know, 10 employees to thousands, right? And so I think, as a way of just even understanding what you have built, it doesn't have to be, and I think part of the thing that overwhelms people is you immediately think, especially if you look at our templates, which we have a lot of templates in there, it's like, oh, this is so much, I can't build all of this. But realistically, you're starting at things that you know you need there, that you have anyway, right? So onboarding, as an example, you know you're going to need to onboard people. So you can start with, you know, you look at our template and we have a lot of things in there. We have, you know, 30-day check-ins, 60-day, 90-day, all of these different conversations that are a part of it, but you don't have to do all of that to begin with, right? You can start with a first week plan and then get that locked in. You then next thing, okay, I'm going to add in the 90-day plan. Like all of these things are building blocks. And so you do what is really appropriate for the size of the company that you're at, is the way I think about it.
So general rule of thumb, if you're a smaller company, you probably start with less moments that matter. And then you kind of build out from there.
Right.
Does that feel about right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, I kind of took you off track. Collaboration on your journey map. Like, it's great to start working on your journey map by yourself, to log into a tool like Pins or to kind of create one on like a whiteboard by yourself. But ultimately, journey mapping should be a collaborative process, right? And there's a few benefits of collaborating with your team members and other people in the organization on your journey map together. First, from a diversity perspective, and I saw a question on that as well, actually in the chat, it just leads to better outcomes. Like our diversity coach, Natania, told us, the more folks think about what's needed for a great employee experience at these different stages of the journey, the better for all, right? You just get a much more diverse perspective, and from a D&I perspective, it just leads to a better outcome as well. I think second, I spoke about alignment within our HR teams, but also creating this alignment and these shared expectations of what is important in the employee journey from the perspective of different departments is really powerful. If you're sitting down with your journey map and all the moments that matter, you talk to someone in support and they say like, hey, in support, this moment is really important as well. You get that shared kind of understanding and a much better experience overall. I think third, having folks collaborate on what the journey ought to be like as a team or other departments just creates more buy-in, right? So if you launch your HR programs, we've all struggled being in HR that you launch a program and then, you know, half the organization doesn't really like what you're developing, right? Now, getting that buy-in from the start is so much better. And the journey map is just a really great tool to get that buy-in, because you can, you know, you show all your moments and you say, hey, which moments are important to you? This is how we're thinking about changing the experience. What do you think? It just creates that buy-in. Fifth, I always found it helpful to, for example, have other departments, like, for example, recruiting, make suggestions about moments outside of their domain, outside of their silo. So, for example, let's say have recruiting comments or provide their perspective on a check-in moment, like the 90-day check-in, right? So getting these different perspectives is really powerful. And lastly, just a more practical one, like many eyes, just make sure that you don't miss anything, right? And it just creates a better quality framework as well. Yeah, so let's talk about actually creating one.
Yeah, get it. And one of the things, I know this isn't something that we've talked about as much before, just what I mentioned before we go into this is, you know, that some of the challenge that I've had over time is that employees don't always know, you know, you might tell them at the beginning, but then they forget, or they don't know all of the things that are part of the experience. Managers aren't always sure about what all of the parts of the experience are. And so it is also one of those tools that you can use kind of as a conversation of like, hey, here are all of the touch points. These are the things as an employee that you experience. These are the things as a manager that we're asking you to be responsible for, right? So it's something, you know, a tool that can be used for that as well. So, okay, now we promised we're gonna like bring it into how are you actually building it? How are you actually creating it? So we've talked some about, you know, how and why you want to build a map, how you'll use it. We want to ask a couple of extra things just to have in your mind as you start creating it. Really to think about what are the things that you know are going to be happening within the business over the next 12 to 24 months. Are you hiring and onboarding? Are you promoting a number of people into managerial roles? Things like that. And then think about, does support for this currently exist? or is it something that we're going to need to create or update? And think also about, what capacity do you have? What is the capacity for your team? Ideally, you'll take all of those things and then focus on, what are going to be the highest impact moments. Work on those first. Those are the things that are going to really support the business's needs over the next year or two. And like we talked about earlier, like initially, maybe you're working on the first week of onboarding, you get that down, and then 6 months later, you're like, okay, I'm gonna now add a 90-day plan, right? It's not all things that you're not prioritizing everything at once. Everything can't be a high priority. Right, okay, so we have all of that bubbling around in our minds, ready to get into the tool and see how to actually build it. And like Lexi said, this is a free tool, so you can jump in. All you have to do is, go to the website and log in, basically. So
Cool. So just a bit of
right.
framing. So
Yeah.
when I was creating these maps in my past life with my team, the first thing that we would need to do was this massive hurdle. We would have to contemplate what are all the moments that matter throughout an employee journey that we can possibly think about, right? So it already started with this massive task of kind of jotting down all those moments. And we wanted to make it easy for you to get started. So what we created is a starting point called a template. So if you log in, you see this basically, and it provides you with a lot of, like, literally hundreds of moments and touch points to consider. So you don't have to start with nothing, with a blank slate, which is probably the hardest thing to do. Now you can see here parts of the journey. So we kind of broke them up in different categories, like, for example, the onboarding journey or the candidate journey, right? And within all of those categories, there's moments. So in the onboarding journey, there's a moment like the offer is accepted, or first week, or the 30-day check-in, right? And all of those moments have touch points where you can decide to engage with the audience, right? So an offer accepted, you may want to congratulate your new hire. Seems like to make sense, right? You may want to trigger a note to your managers to create a 90-day plan. Or you may not need that, right? So if you don't need a moment like that with our tool, you can easily just archive it. So you can just drop it in the archive and not use it. What you can also do is add moments or add touch points. So you can decide to kind of like play around and build your map up, but you don't have to start from scratch. Now, the other great thing that we mentioned before is you can invite other folks in your map. So if you're starting by yourself, which is generally speaking what happens, one person logs in, plays around with it, starts adding some moments, and then invites their colleagues in. And then you can invite your other stakeholders in as well. And then you can later export your map as well. So like, basically, we wanted to provide a template of the entire journey map. But as you said, Stacey, it's very rare for companies to try to do everything in one go, right? Because there's a lot, basically. So can you give me a bit of insight in, like, how companies generally speaking, where companies generally speaking start?
Yeah. So the great thing about having worked on this tool is that then I get to peek in at how everyone's using it. And so one of the things that I've seen a lot, and I've talked to a lot of folks as they've begun to use the tool, is that they start pretty much with onboarding, growth and development, building engagement, manager development, and offboarding. Those are the starting points that most of the companies that I'm seeing are doing. And like we said, I think we have over 3,000 companies who have signed in and started building their maps already. So this is what we've been seeing so far.
So, okay, so this is really good. So like what we're already doing here, if you click on categories, you can select the ones that you want to start with. So you don't have to start with everything. So if you look at the map now, you can see onboarding, growth and development, building engagement, manager development, offboarding, right? So, and you can save that map view as well. So you don't have to like go back to the template will always be there, but you can just save your map view and say, okay, I'm going to concentrate on these areas within our company. Okay, so once I selected the categories, what do they tend to do next?
Right. So the first thing, this is kind of what we talked about, is like, it's really important to understand the current state. So generally what people will do is they'll go through and figure out what are the touch points that we have, that we don't have, or maybe that need some work. And that's the first thing they'll do. And then they'll also want to assign the team responsible for who would work on that touch point, which team would be the ones to own it. And as you showed already, you know, if there's some in here that you're just like, this doesn't even apply to us, you can just remove it. You can add touch points. Some of the things I've seen that have been really cool, we've had a lot of companies start making it their own. And I've seen, like, under building engagement, we have companies who are adding things like, you know, team building events, recognition programs, lunch and learn sessions, all of that. So they're going in there and really establishing what the current state is, and who would be responsible.
Got you. So the great thing about you talk about like a high level and then kind of like diving into these moments as well. So for any of these moments, you saw me clicking on one, there's more detail available as well. So you can click on a moment, you can kind of indicate, you know, do you currently already have it in place or not yet? Is it a high, you know, what team is responsible, priorities? And then we also have these free to use templates available as well that you can leverage and consider using. So for example, here you see one on how to create a 90-day plan. And all of those touch points throughout the journey have those templates attached to it as well, which is really, really helpful. Now, the other cool thing here is that once you assigned, and I've kind of pre-assigned these, current state already, you can filter by everything that, for example, you don't have yet in the journey. So it's really easy to kind of get a POV perspective on all the journey moments that you just don't have in place yet, which of course is very handy for like a journey mapping exercise. And then again, you can save that as a view. So if you want to go back to that, I put it in here as well. You can just like revisit that at some point and kind of use that if you're sitting down with your stakeholders externally, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really, really powerful. So Stacey, another question is that, you know, you mentioned that thousands of folks have used the Journey Designer so far. Now, from early data, where do companies have most gaps in their journey? So the employee experience is lengthy, right? They focus on a few areas, like a few categories of the journey. What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are kind of some challenges that we almost always seem to be trying to tackle, which is like onboarding and offboarding. We know that can always be tweaked and iterated on. But I think the things where I see companies focusing that seem like the gaps, you know, that they haven't maybe focused on as much in the past are more around the growth and development sections and the manager development. And I think that's, you know, somewhat a reaction to the market, right? That they're focusing on the things that are about a little bit more about engagement and retention for folks. So with in the growth and development, you showed the career conversation. That's one of the ones. Those are the kinds of moments that people are really spending more time on and focusing on because they know that that's an important thing to their current workforce. And they're also even adding in moments like to help people get and use their L&D budgets for things like training or coaching. And then manager development is often a big one, really focusing heavily on this moment when people are becoming a manager, because so often like that's a little bit of a missed moment where people aren't they don't know what the responsibilities are. They're not sure what to do. You know, maybe they haven't done one-on-ones before, all of those kinds of things. So we're seeing a lot of focus on that. And as you mentioned before, like being a manager, and trying to create a consistent experience in a hybrid or remote environment is something that's also a challenge. So those are the kind of the gaps. That's where I see people really trying to focus a lot more.
It's interesting. I'm not actually surprised, given the fact that especially in hybrid work, there's even more pressure on managers to be good managers, right? I think middle management do it tough because there's a lot of expectations on them. And even when I was running HR at Atlassian and Squarespace and all those companies, you know, even there, though we invested a lot in middle management development, like manager training and all of that stuff, people still felt there was a lack of support for some reason. And well, the reason was really because the training sessions, like management training, would only be twice a year, probably. Like we would get like a company like Live Labs in and something like that. And it was great. It was fantastic. But there's always a time between when you get promoted to be a manager and when that training really is. So having like being there for that person at the outset, like when a person is promoted to a manager, or when an employee joins the company in a manager role, those moments are actually really critical to capture and to reach out to those people at those points of need when they actually need the information, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so walk me through the rest of the process. So now they've kind of indicated like what they don't have in place yet. You've seen some gaps throughout the experience, like manager development, growth, some growth, engagement related moments. Like what then? Like so you've got that as a team, you've got that down packed. What do you do then?
Yeah, I mean, next, you really have to start setting priorities ultimately, right? You know that there are things you need to work on. Not all of them are going to have an equal impact on the business or meet the business's, help support the business strategies and goals. So what people really do is they start going through and assigning priorities. And, if they're able to kind of use this as a way to tie into like OKRs, or, show the team's goals and like kind of demonstrate that progress over time. That's really it. And as you mentioned already, like this is also where, one person might come in and kind of do the current state, but then they really want to get that collaboration going. So they're going to be inviting people into the map, and they're going to be working on what those priorities are.
Got you. So again, and you can filter again by, things that are high priority as well at the end. So I saved a view here, which just shows, things that you don't have in place yet or needs improvement, and that has high priority. So, looking again across the map, you now see not like all the touch points, all the moments anymore, because you kind of distilled to a small grouping of things that you need to work on first to make your experience better, right? So here you can see a few in onboarding. So your talent acquisition team can start working on that. Building engagement, like high PTO accrual, for example, your HR ops teams can working on that. Manager development, your L&D team can work on that, right? So you can kind of see what is the most urgent thing to work on first. And of course, you can always refer back to your entire map and show everything, right? So you can have those like comparative views as well. Hey, I'm sitting down with the CEO. I'm looking through the entire map. Does this make sense? Yeah. Are there any moments that are missing? Okay. Now let's look at our priorities and have that conversation, which is, of course, a much more strategic conversation than just showing up, rocking up with a list of projects that you think you want to implement, right? This is a strategy framework. This is beyond what we have traditionally done in HR, which is just really a list of projects, right? So that's why I found it so incredibly powerful.
Well, and to your point, it also, I mean, sometimes it's hard for us to kind of say, oh, this is where the work that we're doing fits, right? But if you have something like this, it's a lot easier to say, here's this thing that we're doing. This is the bucket that it sits in. This is the impact that it has. And this is how we're going to operationalize it, right? Or how we're going to actually bring it into the day-to-day functions of the business. So it's helpful. It's really helpful for that.
Yeah. So, and we've got like, as a company, we started out with like the automation side of the business, right? So for example, if a person got promoted to a manager, they moved from 0 to 1 or more direct reports. We are integrated with people's data, like Workday or Bamboo HR or whatever HRIS they use, and we could automatically trigger communications to go out to an individual who had just become a manager, right? So that's our bread and butter. But then folks started to talk about, okay, what are my moments that matter? What is really important, right? So that's why we created this free to use tool. And I can't, I'm so, so happy with how many people have started creating maps. Like thousands of you have started to create journey maps. And that's just, it's mind blowing, right? So there's really this movement, I feel. Lexi, you come back on screen and there's a reason for that.
I do have a reason. It's because our most upvoted question right now from Sarah, which you pretty much just answered, but I do want to address it directly, is does PIN have the ability to send notifications based on the moments that matter and integration options with HRIS? Hit it, Joris.
Yes. Yeah, so that's our paid solution. So we have basically we allow companies to identify all those moments that matter, and then you can like turn on the switch and say, hey, I want to activate these moments. I want to ensure that like across all of these hundreds of possible moments, we will never miss anyone. So we always automatically detect a person coming on board, or a person, hitting their 90-day milestone, or celebrating a 10-year anniversary, or becoming a manager, or being moved from one team to another, or coming back from parental leave, or exiting the organization, or changing job levels, or whatever moment you can consider. We can automatically reach out to those folks. So that's the other side of PIN, sort of say. So we encourage companies to, but you can use PIN's journey design tool as a standalone product as well. We're completely agnostic as well. So you can manage those touch points in a different way that you see fit as well. So don't feel like you're locked in at all. No, please do use the journey design tool. But that's our like bread and butter, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And also asked,
sorry, go like Stacey.
someone also asked if it integrates with Slack. So that is, part of the, as Joris mentioned, that's part of the activation side of the tool, where email, Slack, Teams, all of that is part of the ways that we can be supporting all of these moments and all of these touch points that you're seeing in the map.
Cool. So Lexi, are there any other questions that we can answer? Or is there any other parts of the process that we want to go into? Do we want to already do the big reveal, or
I think
what do you think should be
there
our
are
next
lots
stage?
of questions still. So if participants want to go in and just take a second to upvote those questions to help us prioritize the order in which we answer them, we can do that. And the top question, which I think we just answered, are journey maps integrated with recruitment and HRIS tools? Yes, I mean, you can integrate the paid version of PIN with your HRIS, and then as Joris mentioned, you can use the journey mapper for free with any system that you have.
And I see there's some questions in the Q&A. So if you're dropping a question in the chat, if you can drop it in the Q&A instead, because it's a little bit hard for me to track on both things. But I do see a question that said, how do you get started with the design tool? And so Lexi, are you able to drop in the link to sign up for, to register in the chat? Because how you get started, you just sign up. That's it. All you have to do is go to the link and, sign in, answer a few questions, sign in, and you'll have the access to that full journey map that Joris was just showing.
I saw that someone created there in the chat. Amanda mentioned like trying to build something similar in other tools. I used to create journey maps in Miro and in Figma. And it's great, like it's great visualization. But of course, every time you change something, then you have to start from scratch. You can't have those different views. You can't collaborate easily. It just becomes very messy very quickly. So that's, like I literally building the tool that I wish I had when I was running HR myself, because it would have saved me bucket loads of time. Like, and of course, it's just much more powerful as well.
Yeah, I see one of the questions that looks like the top voted question, and this is something I know, Joris, you have been pushing getting added to the tool, which is they asked, where would you recommend including what the employee should be feeling or experiencing during the moment? And I know we've added the ability to put in sentiment as one of the fields, which I don't know if it came up when you showed the touch point, but it's there.
Yeah, so you can add sentiment data, indicating like, hey, and then you can again filter based on things where the sentiment is lower, right? Where people get frustrated or confused or whatever it is. So you can kind of filter again your map by everything where the sentiment is not great, or everything where the sentiment is fantastic. So that's one thing. We also added personas, so you can change like views between a remote worker versus a in-office worker, or a manager versus an IC, right? So there's these different personas that you can play with as well. Those are all taggable things as well, which allows you to plan differently, you know, for the different demographics that you work with, as well as plan and prioritize based on actual sentiment data.
Yeah, and I think that kind of the personas and sentiment data, because I don't want people to get overwhelmed with like the number of different things and that you can do or that you could use. I feel like the personas are kind of like even the next level of mapping and really building things out. So I want to tell people, like, you can definitely do all of that, but don't feel like you have to. Like, it's not something as a starting point that you need to develop personas and the sentiment and all of that, but it's definitely something that you're able to do. Another upvoted question is that people ask if you're able to modify the templates to match company language and style. And that's absolutely, people are able to take the template communications that are within the touch points and update that however they like.
Yeah, totally. So they're templates. They are your starting point. So we just wanted to make sure, everything is about designing it in a way to make it easier for you to get started. There's still work that you need to do, of course, but it's so much easier to have all of those moments. It's so much easier to have the communication templates ready. Like, what do you need to do in your first few days as a new manager, for example? You're probably going to have a kickoff one-on-one with your new direct reports, and you probably need to know what your new responsibilities are. We have a template available on how to have a kickoff one-on-one with your new direct reports, and template materials on responsibilities for new managers. So you can go in, edit it, and make those changes. So it's really about like making that hump to get started so much easier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, especially for me. And when I think someone asked about, the size of the company, what we're trying to do is create this so that you're not building everything from scratch. You don't have to start from nothing. We're giving you those things that enable you to not have to spend as much time in the building phase and really kick things off and get them going. So I think to make it a bit less intimidating, we're trying to provide as much as we can to help get you started. And yes, I see it. We're jumping back in.
Yeah, we're jumping back in the tool because Lexi is pinging me to ask if we can jump back in the tool very quickly to show the personas as well as part of the journey design. So if you, like for example, in the first week, you can, have an office tour, for example, but obviously that is not really a interesting thing for a remote worker because they probably won't go into the office to do a tour, right? So, that's just for hybrid folks. So you can tag whatever persona is attached to it, and then you can attach sentiment as well. Now, again, then you can start using these different filters. So, for example, if you want to look at the remote persona and their journey with the company versus a hybrid persona, you can see the touch points change on the right-hand side. Or related to sentiment, you can see what is the sentiment across the journey. So you can see here annoyed or overwhelmed or confused, right? Which is negative sentiments. So you can kind of filter again by those sentiments across the journey, or look at the manager persona versus an individual contributor. So that's how you can play with the different kind of like persona sentiments and stuff like that will help you ultimately make decisions on what you need to work on as well. So it's really easy to, to make any changes to that, like welcome kit for remote hires. That's that may be a high priority for us to work on. and sentiment is delighted if people receive it. They're generally speaking very happy. And this is for a remote worker, not for a in-office worker. Cool.
Fabulous. Let's see. Lexi, I know we still want to save time to do our reveal. Are there other questions we should dive into answer or help keep us on
Yeah,
track?
I was just scrolling through the list to see if there was a good one to kind of wrap us up with. Maybe we'll take is it fair to say that you could be looking at the employee journey map in two ways? One, to understand the process, like your employee experience and how complete it is. And two, to understand and track how the process is being delivered for an individual. Do you think that's a good way to kind of sum up how you can look at your map?
Stacey, you want to take that?
Well, I was thinking, I mean, yes, and there are more than two ways. I feel like those are definitely two approaches that people could take to using it. I think the way, you know, as Joris has showed, we have so many different tags and priorities and different things that people are able to add in there and customize for themselves, so that if they want to use it in a different way, they want to kind of create their map in a way that shows, you know, different experiences based on persona, or different experiences based on sentiment, or if they want to show, hey, these are actually the touch points that we want direct managers to be delivering on. Like, there are so many different ways in which that you're able to use the tool based on what's in there. I think that those two ways that were highlighted are certainly, you know, I'm imagining some of the more used use cases for it, but I think that there are a lot of different ways in which it can be used.
I think for organizations, just like before diving into personas and sentiment, just contemplate, what are my moments that matter in my company? Like, just start there. Like, don't overthink it. Start with a few categories. Like what you mentioned, Stacey, is great. Like onboarding, you know, building some engagement, maybe throwing in some live events like going on parental leave and that type of stuff as well. So you have your moments ready and you just deliberate, hey, how are we managing them currently? Right? You have all the templates available. So you have all these suggestions on how you may want to manage it. And then you just add layering your own, right? Start there. It's already going to make such a big difference, and it's going to have such a great impact on the conversation you're going to have within your team and within the stakeholders beyond, to explain what it is you're actually doing. This is our employee experience at PIN, at Google, at Microsoft, at, you know, small company X, right? It doesn't matter. It's just clearly articulated. And then you can start building your strategy. Like, what the hell are we going to work on next, right? You can start working on that, right? And that's so don't overcomplicate it. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Initially, and then you can layer in those additional things as well.
Fantastic. And now, oh, I should have looked up like a drum roll sound effect. But imagine that the drum roll is happening and we will do our visual notes reveal. So, and Harad, if you want to come back on and show us the notes you have, feel free to take a screenshot of this, and we'll also be sending you this afterwards. You'll get the still, and you'll also get the time-lapse version of it being created. This is so cool.
It's so cool.
So
I love it so much.
This was not prefab. So seriously, this happened on the call. We just had some, you know, amazing person just creating this from scratch, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, I love it. It makes me so happy.
And thanks as well for everyone on the call, and for, you know, your eager participation and lots of questions. You know, we are super excited. We are at thousands. We want to be at 10,000s of people using journey maps. If you haven't logged in yet, please do. Like, even just to have a look around, poke around, discuss it with your team, invite someone else in your team to join your map, right? And have a play with it. It's going to change the way you manage HR. And, you know, take that opportunity. It's free to use, so that shouldn't be a barrier there. But yeah,
Yeah.
happy
I
mapping.
want to thank again, also, yes, I also want to thank everyone for being on the call and being so engaged and asking so many questions. Lexi has a ton of resources along with the recording that are going to come out after this. And I think, we probably will be able to answer, if we didn't get to all of the questions, answer some of the questions as well in the materials that are going out. So you will definitely get a lot of stuff following up after this.
Thank you, everyone.
Lexi.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.